This is Katrin with Disability Rights New York. Welcome to our podcast, Empire State of Rights, closed captioned. We are here to bring you information on the most relevant topics regarding disability rights and advocacy. Today we have returning guest Michael Fiske, staff attorney here at DRNY. He's going to discuss his work with the Bedblocker litigation. Michael, can you start by telling us what the Bedblocker litigation is and why it's needed, and more importantly, who is affected by it?
All right. So this is actually one of the first things that I worked on when I started at DRNY. We've been investigating this issue for about 3.5 years now. And why it's called the Bedblocker litigation is because there are hundreds of young adults who have completed their education at residential schools. In New York State, as a special ed student, you can attend a school up until the age of 21. And then after that, there's many people that are staying on because they're in need of services in the community through OPWDD, but there's a delay in providing them these services. So they end up remaining in these schools while they're technically not students. And what they're doing is they're blocking the beds of school-age children, special ed students, who need to go to a residential school. So it's almost a double whammy in effect. You have these adults who don't need to be in school, who need to be back in the community with services through OPWDD. And at the same time, there's children who are in need of special education residential services that can't get them. So this has been a longstanding problem. While New York State has known about this issue for some time, they have not taken the substantive steps to actually redress it. We determined that there was a need for us to engage in litigation against New York State to once and for all resolve this issue so that young adults who need to be in the community can be so and get appropriate services, and special ed students can get the services they need at a residential school.
And for those people in our audience who are not familiar with what OPWDD stands for, can you just give us that acronym?
Sure. It's the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, and it's the state agency that provides and directs services for people with developmental and intellectual disabilities.
Great. Thank you. And so when we're talking about these students who are aging out, can you talk to us about what age a young adult is required to transition out of institutional residential schools?
The final year that they turn 21, they're no longer eligible under federal or state law to be in a special education program. And it's at that point that they should be discharged from these residential schools. And if they're eligible for OPWDD services, be transitioned into those services in a timely manner. And unfortunately, that's just not occurring.
And is there any requirement that they start this planning well ahead of that 21st birthday?
So in the special education process, there's something called transition planning, and that starts at 15, and it's part of a student's individualized education plan, their IEP. And what happens is many of these transition plans are for these individuals is to get services from OPWDD. However, OPWDD is not at the table. They're not actually engaging in this transition planning process. So oftentimes you'll kind of just see some like boilerplate language that says, transition to adult services through OPWDD. But OPWDD doesn't actually start planning for these kids until right before they're going to graduate. So because of this delay in inaction on their part, it's almost inevitable, and they know this, that kids are going to stay on, become young adults who no longer need to be at these schools, but remain there.
And the number of students that are remaining in these institutional settings beyond their 21st birthday, is there a percentage? Do we know how many of these students would prefer to have transitioned out?
Overwhelmingly, the vast majority. There is, one school in particular in Massachusetts, which many of the parents there would like to have their children stay on. But we've been investigating this for some time, and we've identified, at least as of November 2017, 97 individuals who want to be placed in the community, are seeking to be placed in the community, are over 21, eligible for OPWDD, and OPWDD says they can be discharged, but it's not being done yet.
So when you talked earlier about this being a double whammy, there's another part of this equation that's happening. We're talking about money, how much money it's costing to have these students stay on beyond their 21st birthday. And if they're not in New York State, if this money is being paid out of state, what are we looking at ballpark here for the amount of money that's being spent because these transition services are not happening?
We actually looked at this a while ago, a couple of years ago, but so the data is a little dated. I think it's from 2017, I want to say. We got from OPWDD, they were spending about $21 million at programs for young adults who had completed their education. I believe that was out of state, and it was about a similar amount of money for kids in state. So, this isn't just a drop in the bucket. It's a lot of money. What had happened in the mid-90s is historically the county Department of Social Services, they used to pick up the tab for these young adults who had aged out, were no longer eligible to be students, but out of school. And some of the counties didn't like that. They didn't have the resources to do so. And the legislature passed a law that shifted the burden upon OPWDD. So OPWDD pays for kids to be in these inappropriate settings to the tune of tens of millions of dollars a year. And, at the same time, kids that need these services can't get them. They had done a study a long time ago, back in 2005, when there was a proposal of something called Billy's Law. And they were looking at shifting kids from out-of-state educational placements back in state and what effect that would have. And they found there would be a cost savings to taxpayers. They didn't specifically look at these young adults who have graduated, but certainly spending the money in state is going to be more beneficial for our economy and beneficial for these young adults to be closer to their families than being hundreds of miles away.
That's a large dollar amount going out of state that could be used for community-based services within our state. So what steps is OPWD taking to rectify this situation?
At this time, honestly, it's not really clear what steps that they have taken to make any changes since filing the litigation. The numbers are remaining pretty static. We kind of continue to monitor that. It's about 200 and something individuals who have completed their education in state and out of state. What we're looking for them to do really is to begin the discharge planning process sooner. So as I said, there's this transition planning that's required. OPWDD knows that when you need to build a community residence for somebody, it can take 2 to 3 years or longer for people who have complex medical or behavioral needs. So what they do is they usually start at 19 or 20, beginning this discharge planning process. So it's inevitable that these young adults, if you start at that time, are going to stay on beyond the age of 21. So what we're asking them to do as part of our litigation is to start at 16. And that would give them enough leeway, hopefully, to kind of get the foundation, the groundwork, to have these individuals transition closer to the time of their graduation at 21.
And how is DRNY working to help resolve this issue as well?
So, we are obviously addressing this in a systemic manner through this lawsuit. We also take individual cases. I personally have helped many people get appropriate services in the community who have completed their education. So we're taking a multifaceted approach.
And is there anything else that you would like to mention before we sign off today about this problem?
Well, I'm hopeful that, we can once and for all address this issue that's been going on for at least 30 years, and New York State has known about it for that amount of time.
Well, we look forward to speaking with you again and getting updates on where we are with this particular litigation. Thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us again, Michael.
No, it's great being here. Thank you, Katrin.
Empire State of Rights Closed Captioned has been brought to you by Disability Rights New York, your source for disability rights and advocacy. If you enjoyed our program, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this post. If there is a subject you would like us to discuss, please email podcast@drny.org. or comment below. Tune in next Wednesday, where we'll bring you more information on disability rights in the state of New York. The closed captioned version of this podcast is available on our YouTube channel. To listen to more Empire State of Rights Closed Captioned, follow us on iTunes and Spotify.